All right, today we're heading to Cross River State in Nigeria. Now, this place is home to the country's last great tropical rainforest. Think of it as this vital buffer against climate change. But, and this is the important part, it's become a battleground. And what happens here? Well, it decides the future of this absolutely critical ecosystem. And it's all happening right now. So I want you to just focus on this number for a second. 1,667 square kilometers. That's it. That's all that was left of this huge, vast rainforest in Cross River State by 2017. And to really let that sink in, before the first big clearings started way back in the early 1900s, there was over 4,300 square kilometers, a massive, massive difference. So you see, this is so much more than just a story about trees. It's a story about loss, yeah, but also about these really complex pressures. And it's a race against the clock. What's going on here has these ripple effects, these consequences that stretch way, way beyond Nigeria's borders. Okay, let's get into it.
So first up, let's try to get our heads around the sheer scale of this problem and really dig into why this forest matters so much.
Okay, so what we're really talking about here is deforestation, right? The purposeful clearing of the forest. And according to Professor Raphael Afyang over at the University of Calabar, it's kind of like a perfect storm of pressure coming from all sides. You've got agriculture, industry, towns and cities getting bigger, new roads and buildings, and all of it is just chipping away piece by piece at this vital ecosystem.
But here's the thing that's really, really alarming. It's the speed at which this is all happening. The data from Global Forest Watch is pretty stark. So in 2010, the state had about 1.31 million hectares of tree cover. But get this, in the single year of 2020, it lost 12,700 hectares. Just like that. The pace isn't just steady, it's getting faster.
And this is why it matters to every single one of us, no matter where we live. That loss in just 1 year is the same as pumping over 7.5 million tons of CO2 into our atmosphere. It's a perfect example of how a problem that seems local, right there in Nigeria, has a direct, measurable global impact.
So, the big question is, how did it get this bad, right? A crisis like this doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. No, its roots are deep, and they're all tangled up in a long history of policy, poverty, and, yeah, politics. If you look at this timeline, you start to see a really frustrating pattern. Good intentions, but just failed execution. It really kicks off over 100 years ago with big clearings for plantations. Then fast forward to 2008, and a moratorium on logging is put in place. The idea was to stop the bleeding, But then, by 2019, the state assembly itself is actually calling to lift that ban. And here's the kicker. As of 2021, the policies and resolutions on the books, they just weren't being enforced.
I mean, you can just feel the raw frustration in this quote from Itam Abang, a member of the State House of Assembly. She called it a rape of the state's forest reserve. And you know what she was talking about? She was describing the actions of the very task force that was created to stop the deforestation. It's just a staggering indictment of a system that completely failed. And this really highlights a massive disconnect. It's like a tale of two realities. On one hand, you've got the official goals, right? International programs like UN Red Plus, all designed on paper to protect the forest. But then you have the reality on the ground. And activists like Ken Henshaw say that for the local communities, these programs have just ripped away their livelihoods, violated their rights, and offered absolutely nothing viable in return. And if you want to hear the voice of that reality, listen to this. O2 Paul Bisong, a timber dealer, just lays it out so clearly. For him, and for so many others, this is about survival, plain and simple. He says, I need to cultivate my farm. If the government does not give me the space I need, then I have to kill the forest. I mean, it's just such a stark choice, isn't it? Conservation or your livelihood. So, what are the consequences of all these choices? Well, they're profound. Think about it like this. Losing the trees is just the first domino to fall. After that, a whole chain reaction starts, affecting the entire region and, yep, eventually the whole planet. Professor Afyang explains it really well. When the forest gets broken up into smaller and smaller pieces, the wildlife, well, it either has to move or it dies out. And here's a crucial link. When the animals go, so does a living pharmacy of medicinal plants that local people have relied on for generations. It just shows you how deeply the human cost and the environmental cost are tangled together. And believe me, that is just the beginning of the domino effect. No animals to spread seeds, the forest can't grow back on its own. That leads to soil erosion, which means more flooding, and all that loose soil, It washes into the local streams, polluting the fresh water. You see? Each loss just triggers the next one in this absolutely devastating cascade. Okay, so things look pretty grim. The problem is complex, the consequences are severe, so what's the solution? Is there even a path forward here? Well, let's take a look at what's being tried.
So there was this one government initiative called the Go Green Carnival. Sounds good, right? The goal was to plant new trees to replace what was lost. But environmental activist Dr. Odiha had a pretty blistering take on it. He basically said the trees were only planted on television and radio. Ouch. The suggestion is that it was all for show, a PR stunt, not a real effort.
So what is the real path forward? Well, according to experts and activists, it seems to come down to three crucial steps. First, community education. You have to empower the local people to become the guardians of their own forest. Second, you have to give them other ways to make a living, real, sustainable alternatives to logging. And third, and this is the part that has been the biggest failure so far, you need strong conservation laws that are actually finally enforced.
And that really brings us to the heart of the whole issue, to the final lingering question. You've got communities who need to survive, industry that wants to profit, and a government that's supposed to protect the forest, and they're all at odds. So when you put it all together, is the political will to actually do something, is it really strong enough to save what little is left of Nigeria's last great rainforest?